Joining me now is Nationals MP Keith Pitt. Keith, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Look, the government is on this electrification crusade, yet it seems to be killing off gas at a time when, well, clearly we need it the most.
Well, I've got a hot tip for Minister Bowen. If you don't develop your gas resources, you will run out of gas. And that's exactly what's going on. The budget's coming up, Danica. The best thing that Chris Bowen could do, and I've got a very long list of things that Chris Bowen could do, but here's a couple. They should stop funding the Environmental Defender's Office with taxpayers' money, who spend all their time in the courts trying to shut down resource projects, but they're nowhere to be seen when you've got wind and solar projects actually destroying pristine forests and koala habitat. Could you believe it? And they should bring back the Coalition Strategic Basin gas plans, because that'll bring on more gas.
So is that the solution here in the short term? Does there need to be more investment in gas?
Well, firstly, there needs to be confidence. And there needs confidence that they won't move the goalposts. You look at what happened to the Gladstone LNG projects that were built for an enormous cost, billions and billions of dollars, based on the rules that were in place. And this federal Labor government, with Chris Bowen and others, not only change the rules, not only move the goalposts, they shift the whole field, the grandstands, the changing rooms, and put it somewhere else. It means there is no confidence in investment in Australia, and that has been said outright by people like the Japanese ambassador, who are very strong investors here. And in Victoria, there's been a prohibition on development of gas for more than a decade, and they're running out.
Yeah, clearly they are running out. We're also seeing a number of councils, for example, they're looking to ban gas in new home builds. And yet, Keith, a Green Building Council of Australia report released late last year showed that Australia needs to electrify 500 homes every day to meet its 2050 net zero target. Is that even feasible in your view?
Well, firstly, no. And secondly, I'd like to see them building those homes to start with, because right now the Albanese government is nowhere near their target on housing. And yet we've brought in, the federal government has brought in close on 1 million immigrants in a very short period of time, and there is nowhere to house them. And these are the impacts we're seeing right across the country. I've literally got people who are sleeping in their cars and in tents and caravans and under bridges because they can't find housing or can't afford to pay the rent. And it is the fault of the policies of the Albanese government that's put them there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an absolute perfect storm developing at the moment. And you're right, we've seen those tent cities popping up all over Brisbane. It's just shocking. Now, speaking of state policies, every Queensland household will be handed a $1,000 energy rebate under a new plan that was yesterday unveiled by the Premier Stephen Miles. Is it good policy, Keith? What do you think?
Oh, it's a Clayton's rebate. It's the one you have when you're not having one. What an absolute joke. For those who are not aware, you're going to be given $1,000 from the taxpayers' money from the Queensland State Government to pay to organisations like Ergon and Energex, who will then buy things from organisations like Stanwell and Tarong Energy, all of which are government-owned corporations, owned by the state government, owned by the taxpayer. So your taxes fund the $1,000, and then that money goes to the people you own that you fund anyway. They're owned by the state government. What a roundabout.
Yeah, it's going around in circles. Do you think that it will have an impact on inflation? Could it possibly steer the RBA's next decision? What do you think?
I think people are desperate for support, and I understand that. And, I welcome anything that will help every individual get through and pay their bills. But I'm more worried about the federal budget and Jimbo-nomics and the expectation that he will spend every single cent of what is an absolute boon in additional taxpayer revenue, in additional revenue from the resources sector, for example, and that will have a very substantial impact on inflation. We've seen lots of reports from economists and others that inflation continues to be ticking up and out of control, and Mr. Chalmers has to be far more careful and more cautious with the taxpayers' money, because they can definitely impact what happens with the RBA and the next decision on interest rates, and that directly impacts every single mortgage holder in this country.
Yeah, who are already suffering after years of rate hikes. Keith Pitt, good to speak with you as always. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.